Her mother was too sick to work, so the young girl cooked for the rancher, who gave her one chance. The sun had barely lifted over the Redstone Hills when Elena tightened the faded shawl around her shoulders and stepped onto the dusty road. The morning wind bit at her face, carrying the smell of rain and sage. In her basket were a few eggs, a half loaf of bread, and a folded note from her sick mother. Her mother had been the ranch cook for nearly 10 years, but now she could barely rise from bed. With fever burning through her and lungs rasping like dry leaves, she had pressed the note into Elena's hands at dawn. "Take it to Mr. Maddox," she'd whispered. "Tell him I can't come, but you'll take my place till I'm well." Elena had tried to argue. She was barely 17, just a girl, but her mother's pleading eyes left no room for refusal. And so she walked the long dirt path to the Maddox ranch, heart thudding like the hooves of a galloping horse. When she reached the tall wooden gate, she hesitated. The big house loomed against the rising sun, its windows dark, the chimney cold. She'd been here many times with her mother, but always in her shadow. Alone, the place felt too big, too silent. She took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened after a moment, revealing Rancher Cole Maddox, a tall man with tired eyes and a jaw rough with stubble. He looked surprised, then wary. "Elena," he said. "Where's your ma?" "She's real sick, sir," Elena said, lowering her gaze. "She told me to come. Said you'd need someone to cook for the men." She held out the note with trembling fingers. He read it in silence. Then he sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Your ma's been with me near a decade. She's earned her rest. But this ain't easy work." "I can do it," Elena said quickly. "She taught me everything." Cole studied her for a long moment. She was thin but steady, her eyes full of quiet resolve. Something about that look tugged at him. Finally, he stepped aside. "All right. Stove's cold. Let's see what you can do." Within an hour, the kitchen was alive again. The hiss of butter on the pan, the smell of bread warming in the oven, and the soft sound of a girl humming under her breath. Cole found himself leaning against the doorway, watching her work. She moved carefully but confidently, stirring stew, tasting, adjusting with a pinch of salt the way her mother always had. When the ranch hands came in for breakfast, they stopped short. "That your ma's girl?" one asked. Cole nodded. "She's filling in. So keep your manners, boys." They obeyed, quietly eating while Elena served them. She didn't meet their eyes, just smiled politely and went about her work. When they were gone, Cole sat down at the table with his own plate. The stew was simple, potatoes, carrots, beef, but the flavor hit him like a memory. "Tastes just like your ma's," he said. Elena smiled, a flicker of pride in her tired eyes. She'd be glad to hear that. Days passed, and a gentle rhythm grew between them. Elena arrived before sunrise, her braid swinging behind her, carrying small baskets of herbs or bread from home. She worked quietly, rarely speaking unless spoken to, but her presence filled the old house with warmth. Cole, who had lived in silence since his wife's passing 5 years ago, began to notice the smallest things, the way her laughter sounded when a calf nudged her skirt, or how she always left wildflowers in a jar by the window. He'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone brighten the place. One evening, after a long day of rain and mud, he returned to find a lamp burning softly in the kitchen. Elena was there, waiting with a pot of soup. "You didn't have to stay this late," he said, removing his soaked hat. She shrugged. "Didn't seem right, you comin' home to an empty table." Her words caught him off guard. He sat, watching her ladle soup into a bowl, her small hand steady despite the long hours she worked. "Your ma's lucky," he murmured. "Raised a fine daughter." Elena's voice softened. "She says the same about you. Says you're the only man she ever trusted." Cole blinked, taken aback. "She said that." Elena nodded. "Said you're kind underneath all that quiet." He chuckled low. "She always did talk too much sense." They both laughed, and for the first time in years, the sound didn't hurt him. A week later, word came that her mother's fever had worsened. Elena tried to keep her composure, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Cole saw it. That night, he saddled his horse and rode into town, returning hours later with medicine and warm blankets. When he placed the package in her hands the next morning, Elena's voice broke. "I didn't ask for this." "You didn't have to," he said gently. "Your ma's family here. Always will be." Her eyes shone with tears. "Thank you, Mr. Maddox." "Cole," he corrected softly. "You can call me Cole." It was the first time she did, and something in the way she said it, quiet, trusting, made his heart twist. Her mother's health improved slowly, and Elena began spending more time at the ranch even after her duties ended. Sometimes she helped mend tack in the barn or read aloud from her mother's worn Bible while Cole listened from the porch. As summer deepened, the ranch filled with new color, the fields greener, the house warmer. One afternoon, as they stood outside watching the sunset paint the hills gold, Elena turned to him and said, "You gave me one chance when nobody else would." He smiled faintly. "You earned it." She shook her head. "No. You gave it because you're good." Cole looked at her then, really looked. The wind caught a strand of her hair, and in her brown eyes he saw not just the girl who'd stepped in for her mother, but a young woman with courage, kindness, and something that reached deeper than gratitude. He stepped closer, voice low. "You changed this place, Elena. I'd near forgotten what it felt like to come home and not be alone." Her breath hitched. "Then don't be." For a moment, the air between them held everything unspoken. The years of silence, the ache of loneliness, the fragile hope neither dared name. Then she smiled, soft, trembling, full of life. "You gave me a chance, Cole. Let me give you one too." And as the sun sank behind the hills, he reached for her hand, rough fingers curling gently around hers. In that quiet moment, under the endless sky, two souls, one broken by loss, one made brave by love, found something neither had expected. Not a fairy tale. Not perfection. Just warmth, honesty, and a promise born from kindness. That night, the ranch no longer felt empty. The lonely man who'd given a girl one chance had unknowingly given himself a new beginning. And the girl who'd come to cook for a stranger found the home her mother had always dreamed she'd have.